Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today I've just finished watching episode 5 of Hawkeye. This is the penultimate episode. We're almost there at the end. Obviously, full spoiler review. You know, not that I need to say that at this point. Anyways, so yeah, I thought last week's episode was spinning its wheels a little bit. You know, it felt like the plot didn't quite develop as much as I thought it should have been developing. And it feels like this week's episode was a lot of like catching up. Like, okay, we're gonna get back to the mom and Jack, and we're gonna like start developing the plot and be like, okay, here's where we're going with this. That way we can get to the end of the season, and we're gonna see if next week's episode feels like it's too rushed or something. Which I think that's my main concern for the show right now, is that the final episode, we only got one more left. It feels like maybe, like, what if they're not able to like wrap this up completely? Because as far as I'm aware, there's no plans for a Hawkeye season 2. So I think this is it, right? So, we'll see what happens. I don't think this is gonna end with anything like too dramatic. Like, I don't think Hawkeye is gonna die or something like this. It doesn't feel like they've set up for that. But it does feel like, is this gonna end with Kate officially joining whatever is left of the Avengers right now, or you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But yeah, this episode caught us up with the plot. The overall plot is kind of tying everything together, kind of solving some mysteries. And we begin this episode with another cool sequence that we've done a couple times before, I think. So it begins with Yelena, Natasha's sister from Black Widow. And this is the instance where, look, not all Marvel movies have been super great. Black Widow, the movie, to me, was just an okay, middle of the road, kind of forgettable. Like, it didn't seem like it was going to be too consequential of a movie, right? But, this is another instance where it's like, if you have not seen that movie, then you don't really know what the hell's going on at the beginning of this episode. And they don't explain it all the way. I mean, they kind of throw in some dialogue like, quick, spray this thing in her face, she's brainwashed. Wait, what? She's not brainwashed? And they, that you hear some dialogue from the actual movie of Natasha saying like, oh, there's millions of Black Widows all around the world, and we gotta rescue them all, and this and that, so they quickly try to catch you up as to what this opening scene, like what's happening here, by just throwing in some dialogue from the movie, which kind of awkward. But it is one of those instances where it's like, if you haven't seen that movie, you're gonna be a little bit confused here. So it's just one of those things with the MCU. It's like, even the things, and if anything, if things like the fake Mandarin coming back in Shang-Chi and stuff like that, the things that you think are not super important, or the movies that you thought like, that's kind of a forgettable movie, it's like, it'll come back though. Like, everything that even the stuff that you didn't really care for, it'll all come back. It'll all matter later in some way or another. So yeah, this beginning was a lot about like her and Yelena and another Black Widow, which I don't think they say what her name is, breaking into the house of a third Black Widow who they thought was still brainwashed under mind control from the Black Widow movie. And it turns out she wasn't, and this is back in 2018. So, and that's another thing. This show establishes a lot of like established years of when events happened. So Yelena goes into the bathroom, and then she gets dusted. And this was a cool moment. We kind of saw this with WandaVision, where we saw oh god, what is her name? She gets the powers by the end. She's going to be in the Marvels. What? Oh my god, what is her name? I think her superhero name is going to be Photon. Monica Rambeau, I think. Yeah. We kind of saw this with Monica Rambeau, where she got dusted, and then we see her come back and have like this really kind of panicky moment, like, what, where am I, what just happened, and so for Yelena, they emphasize that like it's literally a second. She gets dusted, she's in the bathroom, and then she comes back. Interestingly enough, when they show it this time, she comes back and the bathroom looks the same for a second, and then the bathroom transforms around her. It's almost as if her brain had to like process the fact that like, oh, time changed and everything looks different, but for like a split second everything looked the same. So it was kind of an interesting effect the way they did that. But yeah, she runs out of the bathroom like, what happened? Where am I? It's been 5 years. It's been like 5 seconds for me, you know. So it's just, I enjoy when they do that. This is like maybe the second or third time we've seen that. We saw that with Spider-Man. But the reason I bring up the years, and they do this later where Hawkeye's looking at a statue that establishes, no, 2012 is when the events of the Avengers movie happened, because they, you know, they're like, the plaque said like, the Avengers formed here during the Battle of New York in 2012, and Infinity War happened in 2018. And the reason I'm like emphasizing this is because I was watching the Spider-Man movies the other day, and infamously, Spider-Man Homecoming has a glaring continuity flaw, where at the beginning of Spider-Man Homecoming, they have the events of the first Avengers movie having just happened, and then on the screen in giant words it says 8 years later, and then the events of Spider-Man Homecoming happen, which of course would mean that Spider-Man Homecoming happens in 2020, which it obviously did not, because Infinity War happened in 2018, as is established in this episode. So, you know, obviously I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but just I love it when the MCU reestablishes like, no, these are the years that these events happened. You know, usually the years that the movies came out, right? But you know, once again, one day, hopefully one day, they're gonna re-edit Spider-Man Homecoming and just change the number that is on the screen, because that has always bothered me. I know there's a lot of MCU fans who's like, why did they say 8 years and not 6 years or 5 years? Why 8? It's such a glaring, like, anyways, going off on a tangent, back to the episode. So yeah, basically Kate and Clint have kind of did that thing in the middle of the season where they break up, saying like, no, you're not going to be my sidekick anymore, you go off, just be a normal person, you don't want this life. You know, he was reminded of Natasha in the last episode. Kate goes and basically says all this to her mom, and you know, of course, you still get those sinister feelings from the mom. But then she also says, hey, we looked into Jack, and we found that you know, he has criminal ties with the was it the red jumpsuit tracksuit mafia, yeah, under this shell corporation called Sloan Incorporated or whatever. And so the mom's kind of acting all shocked, right? But I'm like, no, come on, you knew this. There's no way you didn't know this, Mom. You know, like obviously we all know. It's so obvious that it's like very much telegraphed that the mom is up to something. She's so shady, right? And basically, yeah, Hawkeye is kind of having this dilemma where he's like, look, I gotta end this, because eventually the big guy is gonna get involved with Maya and all this, and someone hired a Black Widow. You know, stuff is just escalating way too much, and so he basically calls his wife, and they have this conversation again about the watch being found, which we still don't know what's up with the watch. What does the watch have on it, or what does it do? Someone's like secret identity is tied to the watch, and somehow that involves the Bishop family and the tracksuit. Like, what's up with the watch? We're still waiting on this. A lot of people are theorizing that it's his wife, and that his wife was actually a prior agent, and that's gonna like blow her cover or something. The only reason that would seem a little strange is that a lot of people, you know, even Yelena was able to figure out that, like, oh yeah, Hawkeye has a wife, right? Like, I'm pretty sure she figured that out, right? So I don't know, it just, he went through New York in the first episode with his family, so it doesn't seem to be that big of a secret, right? So like, even if it came out that like, oh, his wife was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. or something at one time, okay, you know, like, why is that such a, I don't know, it, as cool as that would be, and as it definitely seems like she was an agent of some kind at some point, right? It is like, is that the big secret that the watch is hiding? because that doesn't seem like that much of a secret. It kind of just seems like okay, she was an agent. What does that, how does that change the situation in any way? You know, like what does that mean? So I don't know. The watch is still a mystery. I don't know where they're going with the watch. Maybe they won't even answer that, and it's just gonna be like a lingering thing in the MCU. I don't know. But in any case, he basically, without saying so much, you know, he's basically like, look, I'm gonna have to put on the Ronin costume. I might have to kill some people, and his wife is totally chill about it. I'm assuming she knows everything about the Ronin. You know, his wife's like, look, I trust your judgment. You do what you gotta do. Right? Basically like, hey, if you gotta take out some people to end this problem now and have them stop like hunting our family and all this, you go for it, you know? So it's like, okay, it's pretty cool wife, I guess. Like just giving the thumbs up on, you know, whatever he decides to do, you know, even if it's murdering a bunch of criminals again, you know. Okay. So he puts on the Ronin costume, tells some goons to like, hey, tell your boss to meet me where you first saw the Ronin, and they have this big confrontation and big fight. And basically it ends with him saying like, hey, look, I was tipped off by someone that works for your boss. Your boss probably wanted your dad to get killed that night, you know, that's why I was told where to find him. So, you know, look into that, right? Look into why would your boss betray your dad like that? You know, I mean, I'm still the guy that killed your dad, but still, you know. But, you know, of course, Maya almost gets him, and then he's saved by Kate Bishop, and they end up basically getting an Uber out of there. And so, oh, right, before I even get to, like, the very end part, Yelena goes to Kate Bishop's house, and they have, like, this really interesting conversation. A lot of it's pretty funny, but then basically it comes down to Kate trying to convince her, like, no, look, Clint's a good person, and Yelena's just like convinced that he's responsible for all this death, which, okay, he is, but also that like he's like very much responsible for Natasha's death, which that's always been sort of a lingering question since they introduced this at the end of Black Widow. It's like no one would know what happened on Vormir, right? The planet Vormir, like, except for Clint and Natasha. So this idea that she's been tricked into thinking that, oh, Clint caused her death or whatever. It's like, you don't know the situation. You were just told that and just agreed with it. Like, that's always been kind of a questionable thing, because the villains of this show, you know, and what's her name, Val, right, who we still haven't seen in this show, by the way. I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen Val yet. They just told her that, like, yeah, he's responsible for her death. We don't know how or why, or, you know, like do they know about the Soul Stone? Do they know about the sacrifice and the red skulls there? You know, like, do they know any of that stuff? Was that like in a report somewhere? So, you know, a lot of questionable things as to why Yelena would just go along with it, but they're definitely trying to like make it more like, no, she was hired to do this, and she also just believes it, I guess. You know, I don't know, kind of questionable on Yelena's part. Like, you didn't ask any other questions. You didn't like dig into like the specifics of like, wait, so how exactly did she die? She fell off a cliff, but doing what? Why? You know, like, you didn't ask any other questions besides that. Okay. Anyway, so Yelena's like convinced, but Yelena does agree to kind of look into who hired her, and kind of like, you know, she gets convinced by Kate to like, okay, wait, who hired me? Why are they convincing me to take out Hawkeye and all this other stuff? And so she trails Kate's mom, right? You see her following her for a little bit, which, you know, Kate's mom looks around, and, you know, of course you get this shady feeling like, okay, Kate's mom's up to something. I don't know what kind of villain she's gonna end up being, but she's up to something. And she ends up sending a picture to Kate from an unknown number saying like, look, I found the person who hired me. It's your mom. Just thought you should know. You kind of deserve to know that your mom hired me to take out Clint. So, you know, all the plot lines are kind of tying together now. And then sends her a picture. And then Kate looks over at Hawkeye saying like, who is this guy with my mom? And he's like, this is the big guy that I've been worrying about this whole time. And they say that like 3 times in this episode. The big guy might show up, the big guy might get involved, you know. And even his wife's like, oh man, not the big guy. And he's like, this is the guy I've been worried about. It's the Kingpin. And sure enough, there it is. It's definitely Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin. It's a very blurry picture, but from what I can tell, it's not he doesn't have like a fat suit on or any CG added, you know, thickness to him, which was the rumor. The rumor was that he was gonna like be bigger. They were gonna like make him try to physically look different and more, you know, more comic accurate to where like he's huge kind of thing. But that doesn't seem to be the case, at least from what I can tell. He doesn't seem all that much bigger. I mean, maybe he's, I don't know. Maybe when we see him in person, I'm assuming next episode that it'll visibly be apparent, like, okay, he is a little bit bigger, but the picture didn't make him look really any different than he did in the Netflix show. So he does have a cane, though. I'll say that he has a cane, which I don't think he used a cane in the Netflix show. So that's the big difference, I guess. He has a cane in this one. In this universe, he uses a cane. But yeah, that's like the ending big reveal, is that here's the Kingpin, which we've all kind of been waiting on. And look, would these shows be great if we didn't know any spoilers and it was like this huge thing? I mean, sure, right? But hey, I'm someone who has long accepted the fact that spoilers they're just a part of the fandom now. They're you know, you can try to avoid them, you can like do the work and actively try to stay off of social media and try to block certain channels and people on, you know, different accounts or whatever. But at this point, it's like, look, if you know, if Marvel and Star Wars are incapable of keeping secrets, you know, sometimes they're really good at it. Sometimes, you know, entire movies come out and there's like these huge twists that no one saw coming, right? I remember what was it, Baby Yoda. Baby Yoda was a huge thing that like pretty much no one had ever even like guessed at. Like, oh, huge surprise, right? But you know, we all kind of knew Kingpin was coming. We knew it was happening, and here he is, sure enough. So yeah, lots of interesting things. We'll see where this goes next episode. You know, my main concern again is just that, like, is the plot far enough along for this all to like wrap up cleanly? Oh, something I forgot to mention. After Kate mentioned to her mom about like looking into Jack and all this stuff, in the next scene we see that Jack has gotten arrested, and Kate's mom's like, oh, I looked into it and I called the police and they're taking Jack away. And Jack's like super chill about it, like, oh hey, look, I've been framed, obviously, I'll come back to you guys for Christmas, this is not a big deal. And you know, the one thing I'm kind of curious about is like, what is the dynamic here? Because obviously Kate's mom is in league with the Kingpin, and did her and Jack agree to call the cops together? Did they like agree on this just so that way she could kind of save face with Kate, saying like, oh no, look, I'm still totally not suspicious because I called the cops and everything, see? You know, is that what happened? Or is Jack really not in on this, and Kate's mom is kind of using Jack as a fall guy, you know what I mean? Like use it, like pin all the suspicion and blame on him for if she ever gets caught. That way she's still, you know, free, right? Is that the idea? Like, basically, is Jack in league with the mom, or is he actually his own like individual agent? You know, like, is he not actually part of all of this? Kind of interesting, because I don't know where this is going, because, you know, obviously she's evil, but like, why would she call the cops on Jack? Or another thing is, what if those weren't even real police? What if those were just some goons that they hired to dress up as police, pretend to arrest Jack? That way, you know, they can put on that little act, he gets away, and then he can come back later saying like, oh, I was cleared of all charges, okay, we're fine, right? Or something, you know. I don't know where that's going. Very interesting, because Jack is obviously suspicious on his own, but obviously the mom seems to be the bigger player here, hanging out with the Kingpin. Also, why did they kill that guy's uncle. You know, like they're still like, they brought up the uncle dying this time again, but like it's still like kind of a big mystery of like, so what happened there? Did the Kingpin want him dead, but he was killed with a sword? So was it Jack or was it the mom? And if you remember like their argument in the first episode, like, oh, I have powerful friends too, you know, like and that's what I meant by last episode, where it feels like the plot should be more developed, because I still have a lot of questions as to like what's happening here. You know, it feels like we should have gotten our little hint at Kingpin last episode, and then this episode should have really, you know, delved deep into like what's happening with the family and the bishops and Jack's and his uncle's whole role in this, and the tracksuit mafia and the watch, and you know, like, there's so much ground they still have to cover that like I hope next episode can pull it off. You know, let's see. Oh, one more thing. There were even more Spider-Man little Easter eggs into this. Okay, so, you know, this is not like plot stuff with Spider-Man, but in one of the newest TV spots for Spider-Man No Way Home, in the background, you can see a giant billboard for Rogers the Musical, which, of course, that's a really cool connection to this show. But in this episode, when Yelena's talking to Kate and she's talking about like, oh, it's my first time in New York and I want to see all these places, she mentions the new and improved Statue of Liberty, which of course is a huge set location for Spider-Man No Way Home, because as we've seen in the trailers, the Statue of Liberty is being remodeled. Not only is like the green, you know, oxidization, how, you know, the oxygen has turned the copper into green over the years. That's why the Statue of Liberty is green. Anyways, but also it's gonna have a giant Captain America shield on it, which we see get knocked off in the Spider-Man trailers. So, you know, it's really cool connections like that, saying like, look, these both happen in New York. They both happen around the same time of year, I guess. So yeah, you see Rogers the Musical is happening, the Statue of Liberty is being renovated, they mentioned that in this episode, so it's just these really cool connections. It's like, is this show after Spider-Man or before Spider-Man, or even during? You know, like, are we gonna see like at the end of next week's episode, are we gonna see Clint watching the news and see like, oh, a Sandman and a lizard attacked the Statue of Liberty? You know, is that the kind of stuff that he's gonna start seeing? Or better yet, why has he not yet seen on the news like, oh, Spider-Man, his identity got revealed? So maybe that hasn't even happened yet. Maybe Spider-Man's identity hasn't been revealed yet, because you would think that would be all over the news right now, but it's not. It hasn't been mentioned on anything that Hawkeye's watched on TV, and yet in the Spider-Man movies it's like the biggest news in the world, right? So a lot of questions there as to like the timetable of these two events. Obviously this one takes place at Christmas, and Spider-Man, they got home from their trip, and then I think a week or two passed, and then the news report about his identity came out. But that didn't seem like Christmassy time, so this must be after that. But also, hey, maybe Doctor Strange does some spell at the end of the movie, and that's why no one's brought it up, because no one remembers anymore. Who knows? Who knows? All I know is lots of cool connections like the Statue of Liberty and Rogers the Musical and stuff like that. I really appreciate that. You know, like it's the small details in these MCU shows and the movies that bridge it all together, make it feel more cohesive, and like, okay, let's see where this is going. This is pretty cool. So yeah, that was this episode of Hawkeye. Hopefully next episode wraps things up really well, and we're all left satisfied, because as far as I'm aware, there's not a season 2. This is our introduction to Kingpin, and I'm not expecting the Kingpin to like end here. I'm expecting the show to kind of end with like, oh, and the Kingpin will be back in some other movie or some other show or something. We'll find out. But yeah, pretty cool. I enjoyed this episode a lot more than last episode. Hopefully the plot can tie itself together. And I think one more thing, of course, is that, hey, look, Spider-Man, it's technically gonna come out. Today's Tuesday, so no, today's Wednesday. Spider-Man's coming out tomorrow. I'm seeing Spider-Man tomorrow, which is crazy. Like, I don't think I've processed it yet. I have not been this excited for a movie, like since Endgame, really, or at least like I haven't felt like this overwhelming positive amount of hype since Endgame. Because, you know, yeah, Rise of Skywalker came out, but of course the Star Wars movies, they've kind of been clouded with like all of this controversy and all of this, like, you know, there's a whole side of the fandom that's like, no, not those Star Wars movies are, you know. So it's always been, when those movies were coming out, it was kind of difficult to like be really hyped for them when you have this whole internet thing happening, you know. But this movie, it's like nothing but positivity, nothing but hype, nothing but like upwards trajectory of like, oh, everyone's excited, you know. And pretty much no pushback against that at all on the internet, you know. So it's like, I'm seeing it tomorrow. I'm seeing it at 8 o'clock. So far, I muted a bunch of words on Twitter and I muted a bunch of accounts. Like, I think Variety, the major publication Variety, they spoiled the movie in their review, apparently. Like, in their review, they just told like the whole plot points of what's happening in the movie, which is crazy because I don't think they were supposed to do that, and yet they did, and they still get invited to things. And I feel like at some point, because this is the second time they've done this, maybe next movie Marvel's gonna be like, no, Variety, you don't get to see this early, you keep spoiling the goddamn movie. Which is exactly what they're trying to not do with this movie. They're trying to not put spoilers out there. But anyways, so I've blocked a bunch of accounts, I've muted a bunch of words. I've even seen some YouTube channels who, you know, they haven't seen the movie yet, but because people like Variety are out there just telling the whole plot, they're talking about things that have now been confirmed, and they're, you know. So my point is, I got like, you know, what, 24 plus hours to go, right? Be careful out there, guys. You know, if you see a thumbnail that mentions Spider-Man, a thumbnail that has like a picture of a couple Spider-Man on it, scroll past it. Don't look at it. Don't look at the thumbnails. Don't read the titles of videos, because that's the thing that's going to happen. People's thumbnails and the titles are going to start having spoilers in there. You know, so you gotta be careful out there. You know, if you have to try and stay off of social media, which I know it's difficult for a lot of us, then just, you know what I mean? Like, you have to learn to, you know, use your peripheral vision in a way to, like, if you see something that looks like it might be a spoiler, but you haven't fully glanced at it yet, then you get that finger scrolling. Just scroll past, you know? Anything that looks like it might possibly be a spoiler, but you haven't actually looked at it yet, keep scrolling, you know? Anyways. So yeah, Hawkeye, Spider-Man, a lot of Marvel stuff is happening. And there's been 2 major Spider-Man connections, which is really interesting. I didn't expect that to happen. Maybe there's going to be even more. Now that we're going to see the movie and then we'll watch next week's episode, maybe there'll be even something crazier. It's like, okay, so this all happens here or there or whatever. Pretty cool. Anyways, let me know what you guys thought about this episode. Let me know how excited you are for the ending. Are you glad that the Kingpin is now officially back in the MCU? Not wearing a fat suit, it seems, I guess. You know, what projects is he gonna be in after this? Is he gonna be in a future Spider-Man movie? Is he gonna be a major player in Captain America or something? Who knows? Yeah, pretty cool stuff. And I'll see you guys next episode. Bye.